Right, good evening, everyone. Thank you for coming today to Overview and Scrutiny Committee, for all the committee members and also everyone else. Great to see you all. This meeting of the Overview and Scrutiny Committee is being live streamed on the Council's YouTube channel. The recording of the meeting will remain online for 4 years, and if you are present in the chamber, you are consenting to appearing in the recording and broadcast, which may also be used for training purposes. Before we begin, may I remind you that the Overview and Scrutiny Committee is responsible for coordinating scrutiny at Gloucester City Council and acts as a critical friend to the Cabinet. We have a culture of mutual respect, positive challenge to ensure that the best decisions are being made for the people of Gloucester. Please could all meeting participants ensure that we are polite and respectful in both questioning and answers during this meeting. Okay? Please, I'd like to apologise now that this is not going to be particularly slick because I'm not used to doing this. Anyway, we have received apologies today from the Chair, who is Councillor Gravels, Councillor Pullen, and we have Councillor Millard substituting for him today, and Councillor Hyland. Do we know of any other apologies? Nope. Okay, fantastic. Okay, declarations of interest. Do we have any declarations of interest from members? To the declaration of the existence of any disclosable pecuniary or non-pecuniary interests and the nature of those interests in relation to any agenda item. So I think we're okay there. And would anyone like to declare any issues covered by the agenda that are under party whip? Nope, okay, we're good to go there. The minutes from Monday, the 1st of July, were people happy with that? Yeah? And there's no questions relating to that? Okay. Do I need to sign? Okay, that's that bit done. So, public questions. Do we have any public questions today? No public questions. Excellent. Petitions and deputations? No? Okay. We're whipping through this, aren't we? Okay, so the next thing that we're going to move on to is the financial monitoring for Q1 2024 to 25. You can find it at pages 25 to 36. Okay, and we have Declan and Andrew who are going to talk to us about that today. Adrian, sorry. Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you, Chair. Right. This report it's a summary. I'll just explain briefly what it is because we do have a few new members who have sort of, although we did have a previous report, that was for the end of the year. What this in effect is, it's a summary of our financial performance for the first quarter. So that's the months of April, May and June. It's important to note that unlike the previous report that I presented to this committee, this is measuring us against the budget that we agreed in February earlier on in the year. And it's also worth mentioning as well that because it's the first quarter of the year, when we include our forecast for the end of the year, because we've only got one quarter to go on, they do tend to be a bit more speculative and they'll be firmed up as we go through the year. So these are really our best guesses at the minute. Having said that, I prefer that you will see that there are one or two forecasts which are not, which I think do give, cause for concern, but I would much rather that we take a prudent approach right from the start. And if there's going to be issues, I want them flagged up now. So it'll give us more time to correct them and come up with different mitigations as we go through the year. That said, the pressures that we talked about at the last overview and scrutiny, they're essentially the same, really, and they are inflation. Inflation may have come down to 2%, but it's those prices that previously did go up are still there. They're baked in. So it's a pressure that we have to take account of. Higher interest rates, similarly, they have come down a little bit, but they are still historically high compared to what we've had in previous years. Energy prices are still high. And I would also add the uncertainty around the local government funding landscape as a result of the change in the government. We don't know yet, so it's a big uncertainty. So it's difficult to forecast for where we're going to be at the end of the year when we're not quite sure what the financial settlement is from the government. But we can just, what we're doing in the meantime is we're just assuming that these pressures will remain, and we'll go accordingly and hope maybe that we'll get a better situation towards the end of the year. But it's not an ideal position to be in, but it's no different from any other council. If we go through by portfolio, the key pressures that this report has already flagging up. In resources, in my own portfolio, our biggest issues are parking. Parking income's down, we predict it'll be down, it'll miss the budget by about 175,000, which is a lot. And this is really due to Longsmith Street. It's a large part of it is still out of action. We've had to do a lot of work on it. And we've also discovered that less people are booking what you would call season tickets, I suppose, in the sense there's more people working from home. So our income from that has decreased from what we were expecting. I think this will be an issue when we do the budget for next year, that maybe we need to decrease the income we expect from parking, but it's one of the pressures that unfortunately is there, and it's one that we're going to have to deal with. The other issue is commercial property in resources, and I'm sure people will have questions on this as well, but post-pandemic, there was a lot of empty retail units, and that's a sort of carryover from that. Since we've done the refurbishment in King's Walk, we are beginning to fill those up. But until that's done, we still have the costs that we have to meet ourselves. Service charge contributions, business rates, and insurance on empty properties. So those are costs that fall on this council until we can get those units filled. The good news is that we are getting them filled now, but there's a timing issue. And I very much doubt that we will end up with what we had budgeted for. The good news, though, is that St Oswald's nearly full and King's Walk is coming back on track. The other pressure in that portfolio is cemeteries and crematoriums, another area where it's difficult to predict, but the cremator replacement works will have to take place sometime this year, and that will lead to a reduction in income. With regard to housing, homelessness, we're actually favourable to what we had budgeted for because of the actions that the council has taken. And properties have been purchased. They're expecting to come online, I think, sometime this quarter. So that will greatly improve things. So that's an area where it's more positive. With regards to the environment, again, we have a negative 212,000 there, mostly to do with we've got a baler machine which compacts the recycling, which we use to that's where we make most of our money, and that has been out of action for a while, and there's more work that need to be done in it. So until we get that up and running again, it will sort of affect the performance of that particular area, although we are hopeful that once it is up and running, that we will be able to make up some of the difference. Again, this is what you would call a very prudent forecast, so I'm sure things will improve on that. With regards to costs of the waste and recycling, what we're talking about there is things like fuel, staff costs, things like that. Going on to planning. again, we actually reduced the budget for planning because the income wasn't so great last year. There were less applications coming in, and unfortunately, this still seems to be the case. That it could well be a sign. When you sort of see things like you do wonder if people are sort of not holding back their spending and things like extensions and changes to their homes. Is that a sign that people are beginning to tighten their belts a bit? I don't know. But it's hard to make a forecast in that area. The sort of, I think the government has raised the fees, so we'll be able to get some of the income back from that. But again, we're going to be prudent and cautious. And assume a more worst case scenario, which is sort of is the right thing to do from a finance person's perspective. But as I say, this is only the first quarter of the year, so I would hope things would improve later on. With regards culture and leisure, there were two things that the report flags up. One of them was the tall ships. It came in 100,000 worse than expected. Our costs were more or less what we did expect, so they held the budget there, but sponsorship was down and sales were down. Unfortunately, so that's something we're going to have to look at in greater detail and make sure we get right by the time we get to the next tall ship, which will be in 3 years' time. The only other thing that I want to, just the earmark reserves, you can see a summary on page 9, capital programme, appendix 1, finally, one thing that often gets missed, but it's actually quite important, is our prompt payment performance, which is actually very good. If you're a small business, it's absolutely crucial to your survival. Quite often, in some cases, you get paid promptly. And as you can see there, April, within 30 days, 95%, May, 94, 93%, and the rest were all paid, 5%, 6%, and 7%. It's a small total, but often you will get problems anyway. But I'm very happy with that performance because it's a very vital support to our local businesses. So happy to take any questions on the reports. I'll do my best.
Councillor Millard, followed by Councillor Chambers.
Thank you. Regarding 5.5, it refers to the favourable budget is there because of staff vacancies following retirement leavers and a recruitment freeze. My concern is that these jobs still need to be done, I'm guessing. So how are the staff coping with the additional pressures and what are we doing as a council to look after these colleagues? I have got 3 questions. Do you want me to ask the 3 or do you want to reply?
My understanding of this, and I'll need to check, is that it was more delays in recruiting. So I would expect us to get up to strength in those areas, but I'll need to absolutely double check that. So if that's the case, then those savings are already baked in. So it won't affect the year-end forecast. But again, I would need to go through and review that area by area. So yes, it's a good question, but I'll need to double check on it.
So my question isn't so much about the saving. My question is around the impacts to the colleagues that are evidently going to be having more pressure put on them because we haven't got the resources that we should have, and what support is council doing to ensure that our staff well-being is at the heart of everything we do.
I agree with that. So I can't tell you offhand right now, but I will look into that and I'll go through and see if we have any shortages anywhere.
So my next question is around 15.13, which is regarding the underspending on the housing. So what reassurance can council give me that underspend is actually going to be put into the housing and the homeless problems and not going to be put elsewhere within the budget to cover overspends elsewhere?
Well, we'll do it on need. If that was the case, we would put it into a reserve, but that's a decision we'll have to take whenever we put the budget together. But once again, I take that on board that we don't it's not an area we want to sort of skimp on, really. So I can't give you that reassurance now, but I've noted what you've said, so I'll sort of take that into account.
And then finally, in your verbal report, you've described the impact of the beating machine. So can you inform us how long has that been out of action? What is the timeline for it being online? And actually, what have we done as a council to try and mitigate it not being offline for so long, so that actually we are saving money rather than actually having an issue?
I'm going to put you across to Adrian there.
It was actually out of action for about 4 to 6 weeks. It's now back up and running. There was a lot of major work done on it, so we're optimistic that it will last now for several years. But we are also forward planning that capital spend into the next budget.
But I'm also guessing that because it's been out of action for 6 weeks, there's going to be a backlog of work that puts more pressure onto our to our staff. So how are we safeguarding, mitigating those pressures?
The machine actually crunches the recyclate down. What happens is we lose value if we put it onto lorries to go off to the recycling places. So we get a lesser value. So the workload didn't change dramatically, as far as I am aware. And every measure would be taken to make sure that the staff involved were, yeah.
I think the answer would be there is no backlog as such. We just lost the money, which is unfortunate. But then you think, well, should we be reliant on one machine? But I imagine these machines are very expensive. So it's just up to us to make sure it's properly maintained and it doesn't break down in the future.
Thank you, Chair. And thank you, Declan, for a really good and thorough explanation of this quarter report. I'll go on to my environment question because it was in relation to the baler as well. So we only have one baler, and this is something that I've been quite interested in happening over and over again, that when we joined Ubico, we kept talking about the synergies by working with other partners. Was there not an opportunity to utilise somebody else's baler or one of our partners, or are they constantly in use? I don't know. So I don't know how the process works. So is that something we can look at when we keep talking about these synergies that we're going to get from being part of these partnerships, but they don't seem to be coming across yet? So do you have any plans, is the question, to look at synergies and what they might be?
I can certainly look into that. I would have thought probably all the local authorities got one baler each, so therefore there's never one to spare. But that's a good question that deserves an answer. So I'll take that away with me and I'll get an answer for you as regards whether or not we had more than one.
Thank you. That was my first question. My second question was to do with licensing fees, because there was a bit of a dip in that. And I suppose my experience within the planning, there was a lot of pressure put on government from lots of planning authorities, and we were one of them, to increase, to allow us to increase the fees, which happened. Is there any pressure being put on from us to central government to be able to increase the licensing fees so we're not working at a loss when we're determining those? And one other question, so it's slightly different. So if you've got a planning, you have to apply to that planning authority. But with something like taxis, for instance, people can go to other licensing authorities. So what do we do to make ourselves, what's the word I'm looking for, interesting to the taxi companies to come to us? And have we monitored whether we're losing applications or are they increasing?
Well, unless you know the answer to that, Adrian.
We'd have to slice it.
That's another one. I would have to go back to licensing on that one. But I'll take note of that and get back to you.
Thank you, Declan.
Linda and then Angela.
Thank you. Mine was also on the licensing, actually. I just wondered why the licence fee hadn't been increased at all over the years. Do you know why?
Statutory, government won't let us.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
Angela?
I note there's a small shortfall in market. Is there anything to report on the progress with the plans for renovating, moving and improving our market? Because it's a shadow of its former self at the moment. It's part of the appeal to people to come into the city centre. Is there anything new to report on that?
Only to say that I will be having a meeting in the near future. I've asked the officers to set one up with the market fitters, so I can report back after that. We've seen the press stories recently, they're not happy. So it's something that's fallen on my plate, and it's something I'm going to have to sort out.
Councillor Bell?
Thank you. Declan, regarding the baler, this is our main actual thing for recycling. How can that possibly be out of action for 6 to 8 weeks? And if that is out of action for 6 to 8 weeks, I wouldn't worry about the people having to take on more work after. I'd be worried about what they were doing for those 6 to 8 weeks when it wasn't working. 6 to 8 weeks is like a long time for the only machine that we have for the whole of the city. Surely this got to be fixed before 6 to 8 weeks.
I agree, which is why I've agreed to take it away and investigate this further. For all we know, could have been a shortage of parts. I don't know, but it does seem that we could be going on through the year close to budget, and then suddenly one machine gets knocked out, and then it knocks us for 6, which seems to me makes us extremely vulnerable. So maybe we need to have some kind of contingency put in place. But certainly the baler is one of the main things that's come out of this report, and it's something that, and I can see from the rest of the committee members here, they think it's something that we should be investigating, so I will do that.
Obviously, we will always be under pressure with one machine.
Yeah. You're only as, as good as, you're vulnerable as your weakest point. And in the case of the baler, that was a particularly weak point for us, and it's cost us heavily. Don't know how much these machines cost, but I suspect we've probably already lost more than it costs. But I don't know without checking.
I'd like to ask a question myself, if that's okay. In relation to the parking, you're saying that this is due, you believe, to the closure of parts of Longsmith Street car park and when that was totally closed, and season tickets. How is the revenue just for people who are coming to the city and paying to park? Because there was a change within the fees that were being charged, which actually discriminated against people that really only wanted to pop in for half an hour to an hour. And it became very expensive. And I do notice now that other operators have set up within the city, offering far more reasonable prices for shorter lengths of time. And those car parks are busy. So how is that affecting, our I would say footfall, but it's not footfall because it's cars, as far as people coming to park go?
I think it's loss of capacity rather than the fees themselves. And regards Longsmith, would I be right in saying that anybody who buys a season ticket, it's Longsmith they buy it for?
No, it's various car parks.
It's various car parks, yeah. But there has been a reduction in that, which suggests people working from home, etc. Because if you have a ticket, a season ticket for a quarter to come in and park during the day, that means you work in the city. Unless you work in retail, if it's normal office work, there is a big chance you'll be working from home more. So that has affected our income. I haven't seen any stats on this yet, so that will be an interesting thing to look at and see how much of it was driven. I think it's really, if I'm honest, it's 3 things. It's fees, it's capacity, and it's changing working patterns. But had it not been for Longsmith, I don't think we'd be looking at such a big issue here. But unfortunately, we are. As you said, in the same way one baler's knocked us off, one car park's knocked us off as well. And Longsmith still has issues, unfortunately. But yeah, but as I said, I'll have those stats looked at to see whether or not price rises might be part of it.
When you've looked at the stats, if it does appear that there is a lower amount of people using the service because of the price rise and the time changes on it, is that something that we could consider would be reducing that again, to get people back in?
Yes, it'll be part of the budget process.
Right, next is Councillor Bell, followed by Councillor Condor.
I'm sorry, I don't agree with the way you just said that about the car park at all, working from home. That car park's never been used for people working at home. It's far too expensive, in the town for 8 hours to park. The reason that people aren't parking there is because, one, it's filthy. It's full of homeless people. My friend has to open up there at 6:30 every morning when you talk about staff. 6:30 every morning. And she has to put up with drug users, abuse, every day of the week. What we should be concentrating on is cleaning that car park so people actually might want to bloody park in there again. Excuse me.
Excuse me, Councillor Bell, can I just ask that you're less aggressive in your tone? Thank you. Well, you can, but that doesn't mean that you need to be aggressive towards the people who've come in to speak to us. Well, it needs to be reined in a bit. Thank you. Councillor Condor.
Regarding working from home, I think a lot of people now find that they work maybe 3 days or 4 days at home and then come into the office 1 day a week. I don't know anything about season tickets because I'm fortunate enough to live close to the centre of the city and I walk in. But is there any possibility of having flexible tickets so that you buy a season ticket, but it gives you maybe 2 days a week, 3 days a week? Or is that too complicated? Maybe people are choosing not to buy the season tickets because they're buying daily tickets as and when they need, and that could explain it. And there might be a way of looking at the cost and showing a bit more flexibility.
I can take that forward when we do the budget and see whether or not it's feasible to do something like that. Because I agree that with working patterns as they are now, that would make a lot more sense. But how it would work, I'm not entirely sure. And whether or not anybody already does it, again, we will need to investigate.
Councillor Radley.
Thank you, Chair. You mentioned that you thought that part of the reduction of income from car parking was due partly to capacity issues. Do we have any data on the capacity of car parks across the city's portfolio? And there may be car parks that are perhaps not used as much as others, and there may be the opportunity to perhaps have some information to direct people to those car parks. I speak as a very angry person driving around the city centre of Gloucester, desperately trying to find a parking space. And it would have been very handy for me to go, actually, there's a car park, maybe 5-10 minutes away, which I could park at and come into. So there might be an opportunity to make better use of the overall car parking estate.
I agree with that. And it's something that we will look at. We will get more parking space when the forum gets up and running, but of course there'll be more people coming into work as well. But yes, we need to look, I think we need to look at the whole map of car parking in the city and see if we could be doing it better somewhere. And there will be data there from how many people are using each one. But of course, not all car parks we run, but nonetheless, the ones that we do, there is a lot of valuable information that will already be there. So yes, I think we need to look at car parking in the city.
Right, does anyone else have any questions that they would be interested in putting to the Cabinet member?
I think it got a lot of actions from that.
Hang on a minute, we've got Angela Condor.
Last thought, mention of the forum. Do we know how those parking spaces are going to be priced? Are they going to be the same price as in a city council, an existing city council car park? Do we have any influence over that? It's going to be run by a private company?
They will be consistent of what they are in the rest of the city.
Councillor Radley?
My apologies, Chair. This is probably a little bit of a general information question. You very kindly detailed that there are reserves and that there's different budgets for different purposes. Why do you set up reserves for certain purposes, and what are the safeguards to target that money for those purposes?
It's a general accounting practice that you put money aside that you're going to need in the future. And when you put them into particular reserves, you're effectively saying that this money can't be touched. And sometimes we get grants for various projects and they have to be used a certain way, and that's why we will put them in specific reserves. But then we publish them so people know that the money's there. But we have to be careful in how we use them.
Thank you very much.
Okay, are we ready to move on to the next item? Yep. Okay. So I'm trying to check that I'm doing this right. The next item, number 8, Gloucester Guildhall Business Plan. You'll find that pages 37 to 86. Okay, well, good evening. We've got Councillor Courtney and we have Officer Louisa Davis with us to talk to us about the Guildhall Business Plan 2024 to 2029. Thank you.
Thanks, Trey. I'll give you a brief summary of the Guildhall Business Plan. It's the first time we've produced a business plan for this venue. We have been, the Guildhall has been awarded NPO status, which stands for National Portfolio Organisation, and it receives funding from Arts Council England. One of the conditions of us receiving this funding is that we must have a business plan. But regardless of this requirement, the culture team saw a need for a business plan for this venue so that we can plan more strategically over a longer period of time to make sure that we're achieving our vision for the Guildhall. And in case you're wondering what our vision is for the Guildhall, it is to become the home of live music and dance in Gloucester's city centre. In order to achieve this, we have a mission, which is to host and support emerging local talent, present the most exciting national artists, and enable participation in artistic activity in order to grow a creative and active community in the heart of Gloucester. We have already business plans for our other cultural venues, such as Blackfriars and the museum, and so we thought this should be no different. There is a Guildhall steering group, which was another requirement of the MPO status. And this is made up of external specialists and experts who challenge and guide the Guildhall team. They've reviewed this business plan and they've had their input into it as well. So to summarise, there's 4 overarching goals that run through the business plan. They aim to balance the Guildhall's financial, artistic and social and community objectives. So the goals are, firstly, an overall reduction in Gloucester City Council's cash subsidy of the Guildhall to 13% of its turnover from the current 28%. To achieve this, we will need our next 2 goals, which are to increase our earned income through trading activities. So that would include event hire and cafe bars, for example. And we're also looking to increase the size and diversity of our ticket buying audiences. And underpinning all of that, we need our 4th goal, which is a defined and distinctive public-facing artistic policy reflected in our programme. So as you'll have read through, you'll see that each section in the report, and that the broad sections are artistic programming, marketing, building and operations, event hires and catering. All of these sections link back to these 4 goals to show how this plan will enable us to achieve these goals by the end of the 5-year period that this plan covers. We think the plan's ambitious but achievable. It is based on detailed financial forecasting, with the starting point being an average annual programme with forecast numbers of different types of events, audience sizes and ticket income, and also taking into account secondary spend and event costs. And I just draw your attention to the quote at the start of section 2 by Michael Kaiser in The Art of the Turnaround, which goes, "Revenue is the problem with most arts organisations, not cost. Organisations focused simply on reducing costs will continue to get smaller and smaller and will never create the economic engine required for long-term stability." And so that's why we've taken the approach that we have in our business plan. It's an approach of invest to save. So by investing in high quality programming and marketing, we can ensure that we achieve good footfall, better engagement and increased spend.
Okay, so Councillor Bell, followed by Councillor Radley, followed by...
I'll try and calm down a bit.
Thank you.
Hi, Caroline. What was the Guildhall loss last year? How much did the Guildhall lose last year?
Right. If you mean by loss, if you mean what did it cost the council, the subsidy from the council last year was approximately £300,000, as it is this year, maybe slightly more than that. Hadrian might have the exact figure.
Okay, I was only asking because, yes, I know it's arts and it's very important, but surely we have to run for the taxpayers of the city to run something that's actually viable and not just for middle class people to turn up. Maybe we might get some working class people go there if they can afford it. Thank you.
That's certainly the objective of the programming that we have planned for the next 5-year period. And that's why it's important to have a business plan, because you think up ahead, you engage with your community, with residents from all backgrounds, all levels of income, and you're able to say, what is it that we need, rather than just going from one event to the next without really, having a roadmap in front of you, saying, what is it we want to get out of this? By having it all written down up front, we can plan for those things and make sure that we are catering for everybody and not just the things that seem to be the most popular.
Okay, Councillor Radley.
Thank you, Chair. You mentioned in the documents about increasing the audiences, increasing the amount of income. What are the plans to increase the Guildhall street presence in terms of, seeing it on the streets?
Yeah, it's not in the ideal location, is it, for visibility? It may not even really be the location that's the issue. We occupy the upper floors of the building and the lower floor is a bank. So the first thing you see is the bank. It's not the Guildhall itself. We've got a doorway with a banner next to it. But if you're approaching from east, there's a big tree blocking it, so you can't see it. So it has its issues in terms of street presence and visibility. Part of the marketing section of the plan talks about how we aim to improve that. We want perhaps more eye-catching colours and design out the front. At the moment, it's black and white, and there's not really a consistent sort of theme to the optics. So that's something we're looking at. It's something that I talk about nearly every time I see Louisa, because it's something that I feel quite strongly about. I think we've got a real gem there that people would really like to attend and see good stuff there. There is good stuff there. We just need to get the message out, and I think improving the visibility will be a really important step in seeing that footfall increase.
Thank you. When do we get it back? When do we get the ground floors back from the bank?
I I don't think there is anything on the horizon for that at the moment, but obviously, were the opportunity to arise.
Thank you. You've mentioned the steering group a few times, and I think that steering group sounds very important in terms of sense checking what you're doing. They seem to be almost acting like the trustees, sort of. Could you say a little bit more about how those individuals are recruited, if they're paid or unpaid, and how that relationship's actually working out in practice?
So you're correct. They do act similarly to a board of trustees with a charity, and most of the organisations funded by the Arts Council as MPOs are charities and therefore have that structure. When the Arts Council funds local authority run venues, it asks for the kind of body that we have established to be formed. It was recruited via people that we were aware of, current contacts, people that we consider to be peers. So, for example, somebody who's involved with running the Trinity Arts Centre in Bristol is one of the members of the steering group. We recruited people based on their knowledge and contacts. So the two people that run the organisation, GL4, are on our steering group with an eye to us thinking about how we can be more inclusive and relevant. One of the things to note about the Arts Council funding is it comes with a stipulation that we deliver on 4 investment principles. So each of our steering group members, of which there are 8, is allocated a particular investment principle, and they are paid £50 for attending each meeting.
Thank you for that. And how would you characterise the relationship? Are they providing adequate challenge? Is it giving you that test and challenge that you need?
I believe so, yes. The meetings are very dynamic. We present them each quarter with an update of our activity, because we have to send that update to the Arts Council immediately following the meeting as part of the reporting. And they do ask some very good questions, as they are experts in the field. I think they understand where we're at, and they have acknowledged the enormous journey actually the team has gone on in the last year since beginning as an MPO.
Brilliant. Thank you for your time.
Okay, Councillor Taylor.
Thank you, Chair. Part of the goals section, as well as the kind of financial parts to it about reducing the level of subsidy that's required, but there's also another part to it, which is about the public good. So I wondered if I could ask about that. So part of the public good section it implies is that the diversity of the audience should be improved. Now, I would agree, a more diverse audience would enhance the role that the Guildhall can play in kind of promoting public good, because it will bring more kind of cultural enrichment to wider parts of the community in Gloucester. So if I could ask you about specifically a couple of things. First of all, the equality, diversity and inclusion section refers to a kind of plan, an anti-racism plan. What might be involved in that?
I know there's a number of programmes of activity planned for the anti-racism plan. The first one is understanding properly what racism is, how it affects people, how it can be unconscious. It's not always a demonstration of someone saying something racist or behaving in an overtly racist way. It can be unintended, but, I don't know, insidious, is that the right word? And I believe that training has been rolled out or is being rolled out at the moment. And then there are further activities planned for subsequent periods of the plan. I don't have the full information on that. I don't know if Louisa, you have anything. Yeah.
I can give a bit more detail. A big part of the immediate work has been with the steering group, the aforementioned steering group, because we have 2 people on the steering group who are representing the inclusivity and relevance investment principle of the Arts Council. We've been talking with them. In fact, that a lot of the challenge and discussion at the last meeting was about the anti-racism work. We have done the training with all staff, and one of the things we immediately committed to was putting anti-racism front and centre in this plan. Most of the other work that's really happening at the moment is around benchmarking. It's around understanding the diversity of our artists and audiences, collecting some data around that, but also using data through our ticket system to give us some intelligence. And then looking at how we share our statement and commitment around EDI in the building, and reflect that in the language that we use. But yeah, it's an ongoing piece of work. And I think the thing that the team took away from the training is it wasn't just something we could fix overnight. It was a longer term piece of work.
Okay, yeah, thank you for that answer. And yeah, what that kind of implies to me is that there's a problem which has been identified in the diversity of the audience. So kind of two questions on that. Well, first of all, is the audience of the Guildhall as it currently stands undiverse in terms of ethnicity? And second, if that is the case, which I'm assuming based on what you've just said, it probably is, what is the strategy for increasing the diversity of the audience of the Guildhall?
I don't know whether undiverse is the word we'd use to describe our audience, not because it's a bad word, but just because, we do get audience members from, from all backgrounds, communities and so on, but we do recognise it perhaps doesn't accurately reflect the diversity of our city. We want to make sure it does. We want to make sure that there's as much diversity in our programming as there is in our residents of our city, and that there's something that everybody will want to go and see. Like I said to Councillor Bell, that's kind of why we have this plan really, and why we're consulting with community groups, with external steering groups and so on. We have an artist in residence who is involved in a number of more ethnically diverse community groups. I met with him a week or so ago. He has loads of really great ideas about the sort of thing that we should be promoting at the Guildhall, as do other groups that we're engaged with. We have a young group called, I'm going to get the name of it wrong, the hip hop group. Next Step or something. Yeah.
Your Next Move.
Your Next Move, that's it, sorry. That's my age. Your Next Step, which is a young, sort of teenage age hip hop group. So we're trying to recognise young, old, ethnically diverse, people with different abilities as well, disabilities, specific interests that people, might want to see at the Guildhall that we can programme for them.
Thank you, I appreciate that. And also thank you for widening that conversation out a bit to other elements of diversity. And you mentioned young people, and that was also something I wanted to ask about. Now, I appreciate in the report it does list about how they are kind of, and you've just mentioned it as well, how they are bringing in more voices to kind of be heard from about what the audience, what the kind of offer is to expand the audience, but it doesn't give any specific details on what the change might be to what the offer is. So what the Guildhall offers going to change to bring in more young people to it?
So we have some, the report talks about some of the work we do to sort of bring on young artists as well. So we have like incubation programmes where we're looking at young people that perhaps have an idea or have perhaps started some kind of business idea, or maybe not business, just a creative idea that we can help support, perhaps give them some seed funding to help it take off, give them opportunities to perform and spaces to perform in to increase, the public awareness of what they do. There are other examples as well in the report that, that I could go into, but yeah, we do already have that as part of our plan, as something that we want to focus on. bringing through the next generation of young creatives and artists.
Thank you. And I guess I would love to hear more about that, but I guess that will touch a bit more on marketing and outreach, which I'm sure other members have questions about. So thank you.
Councillor Castle.
Thank you. My question has been partly asked again by Anne. It's more to do with the when you walk past, the sort of signage, how to get people into the building. And I appreciate it's very difficult with the frontage that you've got there, because I walk past it and you don't realise you've walked past it, even though I know where it is. I wondered if you thought of anything like, could you have like a hologram or something? You know, by the door.
I said that.
Yeah, something. It's got to be something that's very different from anything else to make people stop and think, oh, what more is in this building?
I have lots of ideas for that. Yeah, one of the ideas, and I don't know how doable any of them are, because I know there are things like planning and, you know, there are also other businesses, and there's a business in the actual building itself that you have to be mindful of. But yeah, one of the things I thought of was, what if you had a projector that projected an image onto the building? I don't know. Or one of the things I thought of, because there's a screen above the door, and I thought, what if you could have audio coming out of the door and people walk past and think, oh, where's that music coming from? Or maybe it's just commentary about some of the acts that are there. So I've got lots of ideas, and we're going to be discussing them in readiness for our next council plan, to see how exactly we're going to get down to that level of detail of exactly what is it going to look like and how is it going to attract attention. So yeah, watch this space, but by all means, give me your ideas if you have some too.
Thank you.
Earlier, a few of you put your hands up and I missed who it was. So if we could have Steph Chambers, followed by Councillor Condon.
Thank you, Chair. And thank you for bringing this report. And I think it's really important that it has a plan. I know we've been sort of pushed into it, but it's always good to have a bit of a nudge, isn't it, to get things done. There's three areas I just wanted to touch on. One is training. So I noticed in the report there's several areas on training. So there's anti-racism, visual impairment, cultural awareness, some other things, which is fantastic. Agree with all those areas of training. But one of the things you touched on is increasing revenue, and that's one of the main problems. And I think some of the issues that I think have arisen within the Guildhall previously is because it is a creative industry, and sometimes, you know, creativity is focused on, which is important. However, you know, we need some training, because I really believe that the culture that needs to run through all the employees there are the business and the marketing elements of how to make this work. And everybody needs to focus not only on the creativity, but on the marketing. You know, marketing is key, how this is portrayed. And I've lived in this city all my life. I very rarely come into contact with any marketing from the Guildhall, you know, and I'm somebody that is involved in this city, and, you know, my children are brought up here, but they don't visit it. So I just think the culture there needs to be some more training for the staff on how important, you know, the marketing and how these things are sold to people. So I'd really like to see a culture of business running through that place, because it does need to be a business. It is going to have to rely less on money from the city council. You know, we've got other things. We want successful culture businesses in the city, but I'm not so keen that we keep subsidising them to the level that we have done previously. I'd like to see these commercial properties being utilised and really having some commercial increase in their revenue. So that's the first thing. So would you consider some training and really embedding that culture within the staff within that building?
Yeah, I totally agree with you. I think marketing, including brand awareness and all the rest of it that we've already talked about tonight, is really important for the Guildhall, and is one of the key things that's going to make sure we achieve the incomes that we're projecting in this report. I would balance that with, we have to manage our expectations around the programming. Not everything that we programme at the Guildhall will make a big profit. we receive funding from Arts Council England, and they have very specific criteria that we need to meet. And it might be that some of our programmes don't have the mass appeal that a Oasis tribute band might have, but it has public value, or whatever that word was. And to Councillor Bell's point, it might appeal to perhaps a smaller section of the community, but no less important that they have something they want to see. So they don't all have to be big money spinners, but it balances, the balance of it should be that we're able to generate enough income to reduce the subsidy as we've set out in the plan. And to do that, we have a full-time marketing manager, senior marketing officer, and a part-time one as well. And yes, they are going through training. They're in consultation with organisations that will help us to improve and define our brand and make it something that will stand out in Gloucester. I'm the same as you, I'm a hard to reach person by marketing because I don't go on social media. I don't necessarily look on websites to find out, what each venue's got going on. I'm more likely to see something when I walk past a poster or see a leaflet drop through my door or something. And I love those little brochures you get. And we've got plans for that too. It's not all just going to be digital marketing. It's going to be, your traditional, leaflets and brochures telling you what's coming up. So we're looking at all different mediums of advertising for that to get to those of us that are harder to reach.
Thank you. The next bit, hopefully with some of the regeneration that's going on within the city, this is something that could really benefit the Guildhall, I'm hoping. You've got the Forum, you've got the university. The regeneration of the city centre should be bringing more footfall, the more city living, more housing developments we've got coming around the city centre, should bring that natural footfall, which will be really good. One of the things that I don't think is also marketed very well is the access of parking and how easy you can walk in at the top if you park at the top car parks. That's one thing I'm always looking for if I'm going off to the Everyman or something. I really like that I can just walk straight into the theatre there. And I just think that would be something to make more of, that some people, okay, we want to encourage, buses, etc. But some people won't rely on them if they're going on their own. So that is a safety aspect, that you can go there and just walk straight in really easily at night time. So I think that's something we could make more of. And then the last thing, where did it go? Yeah, no, it was really just about the regeneration of the city centre and the Forum, and hopefully we could naturally pick up more there. So it was that one.
Yeah, thanks, Stephanie. Again, you're spot on. I didn't realise until I had a proper tour of the building that you could get in directly from the car park. And it was only the next time I parked in that car park and I saw the sign saying Guildhall on level 4 or something. I was like, oh, yeah, of course it is. I'd never noticed that before. So, yeah, making that more visible would really help as well. Because there's a lot of people, if you're coming out from a performance late at night, you don't want to be walking across the city. If you know that you can just go straight in, it's quite a nice thing to have and a good selling feature, I would say.
Yeah, so sorry, one more thing I did remember just then, what I was going to say. One thing I did when we held, so occasionally 6 monthly in planning, we have a sort of group, get all the people in the industry. And it was when we'd just done the refurb of the Guildhall. And I said, well, that's where we should do it. So I'd just like to see more encouragement of businesses around the city utilising it for their business clubs or their meetings, and we had the water talk was done there in the cinema when the Water Severn Trent come to talk to us. I think utilising that business way might help support some of the other creative industries that you said, don't always make a profit, but, doing those things and pushing those things could help too.
Yeah, absolutely. We when we talk about event hires, it's not just renting out the performance space. We have a number of meeting conference rooms with good conferencing facilities in them. We've got really good Wi-Fi in that building now as well. So it's really geared up for business meetings, and it's an area that we're looking to increase our revenue from, as well as hiring it out for things like Christmas parties and stuff like that. So there'll be seasonal things as well where we'll be looking to capitalise on getting businesses to come in and consider us for hosting their events.
one other thing that I just remembered because you said that, sorry. So we have, obviously there's a social value element to every contract that we put in. Is that something that would it be right to encourage people that maybe receive funding or contracts from us, that one of their social value elements could be that they utilise some of the city council spaces that does put then the culture element of the city, it makes it more versatile and reliable?
I think we'd probably have to investigate that, whether that could be made a condition of those kind of things. It kind of feels like we're giving and then making them give it us back, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, but maybe just encouraging that's
But
one element that they
you're
could
right. Promote
tick for
it
their
or
social
tell
value
them
box.
it's available. Yeah, it could be. We'll look into that and come back to you.
Okay, Councillor Walker, you've been waiting a while.
Okay, thank you, Chair. Yeah, my questions just relate to items 3.3.9 and 3.310, which just concern the food options and the catering. I believe at the moment you don't offer hot food as an option. It's just cold at the moment.
Yeah, that's right. At the moment, we're just offering snacks and refreshments. So before performance, the cafe's open a couple of times during the week, and usually an hour or so before performances, so people can buy refreshments, and also for the cinema as well.
I just think probably part of what you were saying earlier, in that you have to invest to sort of increase footfall and expenditure. If you could look at going back to, because I think you've offered hot food in the past, for example, hot dogs and fries on a film night, that would perhaps increase the appeal, increase footfall, and also increase spend per customer, which I would imagine is something you're keen for. And perhaps if you're doing music nights or flamenco dance, you could tie it in with hot tapas food. So you've got music and catering working together as a theme night. Again, would improve its appeal, I think.
Yeah, we do. Yeah, it's definitely something we're looking to reintroduce and have more of, such as kitchen takeovers, where perhaps somebody comes in and uses the kitchen to prepare food and have it available for an event that they're doing or supporting. There are some events that we have annually as well. We have occasion event where we'll was it gumbo or something like that? I can't remember. Some types of Cajun food that are made available for those events as well. It seemed to be very popular. But yeah, it's something that we want to reintroduce. Now we've got a business plan where we're increasing the footfall. It will make it viable to bring that back as an option.
Well, I hope it would be, as I said, attractive to increasing footfall and also increasing that spend per head, which is something to aim for.
Absolutely.
Okay,
Yeah.
all right, thank you for your answer.
Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Bell, please.
I would say I brought up racism because the report does.
I think, I know there wasn't a question there, but I just want to say we may be perhaps more tolerant than other cities in the country. We may not. I don't know what the statistics are on that. But people's lived experience is often that they encounter racism. We need to make sure that our staff are prepared and trained to know how to deal with that if they encounter it or witness it. So that's why we have a policy for it.
Can I just say, I think as well that it is vitally important about having training for racism, because even if there was not one person in Gloucester who is racist, which sadly I don't believe for 1 minute, we will also be having people coming from other places or people who may have historically experienced racism and discrimination, and all that impacts on the things that staff need to know in the way that they work. So thank you for having that in the business plan.
Chair, could I just say something? Just because it was before Caroline's time, but there was a fantastic report, and I don't know if you've seen it. I can't remember what it was called. The commission, what was it called? The race commission. They did all the historic sites and everything. Really good read.
Let's get back on track. Next person was Councillor Conda.
Thank you. We had mention of students, but I think there are another couple of groups that possibly are increasing in size in terms of the people who actually live in the city centre. And that's retired people, because we've got, for example, Castlemeads Court, Friars Orchard, I think, has got retirees in as well. And also, I was thinking about the schools. Some of the secondary schools are all on the periphery of Gloucester now, I think. And it could be that a lot of those young people and their families don't come into the city centre for entertainment. Is there an opportunity to talk to, for example, the drama department or the music department, if such exists in some of these schools, to see if they'd be interested in putting a performance on in the Guildhall? It would bring families into the city centre. It would give the young people a different professional dramatic environment in which to perform, and open up their show to anybody who cared to visit, not just people who live in the community around their own school. And secondly, and this is related to marketing, the rapid depletion of or disappearance of our tourist information centre, which is virtually non-existent, which for an historic city is remarkable. There wasn't much to it when it moved into the museum, and it's become less and less. And we talked about not just digital marketing and the importance of happening upon information, seeing a poster or a flyer, what I call serendipity. I think that's really important. And the Tourist Information Centre would be the destination of anybody coming to the city as a visitor. And at the moment, they would be hard-pressed to find it. And when they got there, there wouldn't be much to look at. So I think that's really something that needs to be explored. It did occur to me that the Guildhall could be a tourist information centre. You can also get digital panels that are erected in the street so people can interrogate a system and find out what's on. So I think there are all sorts of ways to explore that way of informing people as well.
Thanks, Angela. I'm going to write down all of your ideas and shamelessly rip them off. No, I agree with you. What I'd like to see is promotional material for our venues and our events in a number of public areas, such as bus stations, train stations, people visiting Gloucester, for the day and thinking, well, what are we going to do? Or visiting relatives for a weekend, what am I going to do to keep the kids happy? It'd be nice to just pick something up on your way in and see what's on, wouldn't it? And other public places too, like supermarkets, hotels, that kind of thing. It's, as you call it, serendipity. It's you happen to pass by and see what's on at the Guildhall. So, yeah, we're already thinking along those lines. And as for the digital displays, we have those in the city centre, don't we? I don't think they're interactive at the moment, though, are they? I don't know. Maybe the ones where you're trying to find out where you're going are. But, yeah, there could be potential there, couldn't there, to have some listings on there. I know they're doing something similar in King's Square, I think, maybe. Yeah, but yeah, definitely want to consider. Thank you. Oh, that's the problem when you ask me two questions, I immediately forget the first one. Sorry, you said about the schools, didn't you? Yeah, that's a really nice idea, actually, to try and an outreach to try and get people interested at, from an early age and get them keen on performing and so on. I don't know if we have anything already where we engage with schools. Might be something we have to speak to county about to see how something like that would work, because it'll cross over with education, I suppose. But
We do have some engagement with schools, but it's primarily, I suppose, from a point of view of trying to promote our performances and events for them to attend. But we do have a partnership with the primary school in Barton and Treadworth that we're going to commission an artist in partnership with them. I think if a school wanted to use our spaces to put on a school performance or event, then we would have to consider that as a hire because of the costs involved in, you know, providing the technical support, staffing, etc. for that kind of event. But we would obviously look at it from the point of view of how could we grow that partnership subsequently to them doing that performance and think about, you know, a reduced rate and that kind of arrangement.
Councillor Radley.
Thank you, Chair. Reading through the report, you talk about superfast broadband, kind of those sorts. Is that in place now or yet to come?
That's in place now.
Lovely, because you also talk about something which I thought was quite innovative, which was not just live streaming in, but live streaming out. I'd be really interested to hear a little bit more about your plans about how that's the idea around promoting local artists, I think particularly young people, to give them a bigger opportunity to sell themselves and their services out of Gloucester, it's kind of our own export market.
It's quite a new development, the digital side. It's something that's been specifically funded as an area of development by the Arts Council MPO grant. So far, one of Your Next Moves multi-style battles has been, breakdance battles has been live streamed out of the building free of charge from a point of view of trying to grow that audience for those young performers, as you say. But we're also experimenting with the streaming out behind a paywall, and at the Cajun Festival in January 2025, our Saturday night headliner, who's a Grammy-nominated performer, will be live streamed out as behind a paywall as a way of generating income, as suggested by Councillor Chambers. So we're thinking about it from that point of view as well.
Lovely, thank you, because that was a little bit more creative than, you know, a lot of places which are bringing things in, sort of sending them out sounded really interesting. I also note in your report you talk a lot about your artists in residence, the associate artists. What's the process of choosing and identifying those individuals?
In the first instance, the process has been a curatorial one, I would say, in that the programming and producing staff in the Guildhall who know their field and know the local artist landscape very well have selected and proposed people for those roles. But moving forward, I think we're interested in making that a more open process. Certainly with Your Next Move, the idea that they would be our associate artists was built into our funding application, so we knew that they would be our associate artists from the get-go due to a long relationship with them. But some of the others have been suggested by our programming cultural development team based on existing relationships.
Thank you. When you described that as sort of a beautiful way of saying people we know, people we work with, it's lovely to hear that you're planning to make that a more open and transparent process, because that I think would be very supportive going forward. I was also wondering, within the document, that there's the tension between bringing things into the city, bringing things into the centre, but supporting the work that's happening on the outskirts. How are you balancing that tension between the middle and the outside? You talk about telling the stories of Gloucester, and of course some of those stories on the outside of the city are very different to the stories on the inside of the city. How are you planning to balance that?
Well, I think it'll be from the people in our community panel that we engage with when we're considering our programming and how we reach the different areas of the city and the different communities and neighbourhoods within the city. So we're not looking at just having, you know, one person employed by the Guildhall or by the council or councillor who decides what our programme should look like. It's through consultation with community members that we already engage with. Is there anything that you would want to add to that? No, yeah, that's it.
Thank you. And my last one, I promise. You talk about trying to engage more with the over 55s, the recently retired, sort of the daytime available, and also sort of families. And the daytime available in terms of families would be those with small children. How are you hoping to balance those needs? Because those two groups can sometimes have very different requirements.
We have a number of things during the daytime that could appeal to both. I mean, we're not looking to try and appeal to everybody at once, obviously. We'll have certain activities on certain days. So like our cinema screenings, for example, are very popular with the perhaps over 50s, but we also have very family specific ones, which are ideal for families with younger children who perhaps don't want to go to other cinemas are available. To spend, 90 quid on pick and mix. They just want, a day in town, or let's pop in, watch a film. I don't think it has to be one thing or the other. It's not like we have a daily programme that's just aimed at families or a daily programme that's just aimed at over 50s. There should be things that both can enjoy. But yeah, the cinema is one very good example of that, where we try to vary the programming so that it appeals to different, and it's not just elder people and very young people. There's people in between too.
Thank you very much. Cheers.
Councillor Hyman. Again.
Yes, you talk about increasing income generation from year 3 by having something in the Gloucester Park. But I understand that King Square is underutilised, and perhaps we could have something there as well. Perhaps an open air theatre or something. But I can't see how you can actually cut it off to get money off people that way. So I suppose you'd have to go around with a collection bucket or something.
Yeah, but you probably hit the nail on the head yourself there, haven't you, with how do you monetise it if you can't charge entry to it. So that's probably why we haven't considered it in this business plan. However, I do love the idea of open theatre. I feel like theatre is something that's missing a bit in Gloucester. For a big city, well, small city perhaps, but for a city. And it's something I'd love to bring to Gloucester. So maybe King Square wouldn't be the place for it, but that's certainly something I'd love to see. I've been to open air theatre before and it's just the best. So. Oh, did you? Okay. Auditions will start soon. Oh, yes, yeah, of course.
Right, has everyone asked everything they'd like to ask? Okay, well, thank you very much for presenting that to us. It sounds really interesting, and hopefully in the not too distant future, the Guildhall will be standing on its own 2 feet. We look forward to everything that's going to happen. Thank you. Right, does anybody have any comments on the work programme and council forward plan? Steph Chambers.
I think it changed following group leave catch-ups in between the meetings. There was a couple of other cabinet reports which were due to come, which are coming to the next committee meeting. So it was just taken off in between meetings in favour of other reports.
Any other questions? Lauren.
Sorry, just to quickly chip in, is that we've got quite a busy agendas over the next couple of meetings, and so the work programme is likely to change again over the next few weeks. So as always, if members have any questions for additions to the work programme, you can either make them here or email the chair and vice chair and copy myself in, and we'll look at the requests in between meetings and see what we can facilitate. But if you're wondering why the work programme is a bit crowded, we do need to shift some things around to make best use of time.
Okay, well, I think that leads us to the date of the next meeting, which is on Monday, the 7th of October, 6:30 here. But if people could just get here a little bit earlier, it's always helpful just in case we need to clear anything up, talk about anything or sort anything out. So thank you very much, and I hope you enjoy the rest of your evenings.